Hello everybody, today I'm going to be reviewing Dragon Ball GT. Now this is the anime series from 1996 to 1997. There is 64 episodes in total and I'm going to be reviewing them episode by episode. And this is either going to be one long video or I'll break it into parts. We'll see how it is. I'm going to try to summarize each episode and give my thoughts and then move on to the next one. Now this is the first time that I really watched the show. If you're anything like me, I'm a huge Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z fan of the original anime series. And I've watched Dragon Ball Super and I'm watching Dragon Ball Daima. And I have my thoughts on those two, which I'll do videos separate about them. But it's like all these in GT, they're all kind of vying for the successor to Dragon Ball Z, right? GT was the first thing we kind of got. People are like, that's not canon, but Daima's canon and Super's canon, and yada, yada, yada. People say a bunch of different things. To me, Dragon Ball GT's always been like the redheaded stepchild you want to ignore, you want to pretend it doesn't exist, and you just kind of shove it off into a dark corner somewhere, right? Well, I feel like I've been unfair to it because I honestly didn't give it a chance. I did watch the first couple episodes when they were subbed in English, but never voiceover in English. Now I did finally get the 2003 version of the actual English voiceovers, and that's what I'm going to be watching, and I'm going to be reviewing right after I watch each episode. I'm going to give my thoughts, and then I'm going to move on to the next one, watch it, and then give the thoughts about that one, and so on and so forth. So without further ado, that's what we're going to do. At the end of the video, I'll give my thoughts on the entire series, but let's start now. Episode 1 is called A Devastating Wish. So we start out with this group approaching the lookout. We see blue hands. We hear familiar voices. If you're a Dragon Ball fan, you knew right away who they were. I was pretty excited about it. But we see them approaching. They say they hear some commotion. Something's going on inside the lookout itself. And they said, great, that's a good distraction for us to infiltrate undetected. So that's what they go to do. We go inside the actual hyperbolic chamber that's on the lookout, and we see an epic battle between Oob and Goku going on, which is nearly destroying the outside of the hyperbolic chamber, as well as the inside, as we can see here. We see a robot that's hanging on to the side of the lookout, which is the prior people that are trying to infiltrate it. And then it's finally revealed that it is actually Emperor Pilaf that is the guy. So we go and we see what the remains of the lookout look like after the battle. We see fallen over columns. We get a nice look at of Dende and Mr. Popo. They were trying to survive the damage that was going on around them. And then we see Oob and Goku leaving the chamber and saying they finally completed their training, which took 10 years. 10 years Goku was training this guy. Forget everybody else, 10 years. So anyways, Oob says he's going to go back to his family. And Goku says he better go back to his because he hasn't seen his in years, of course, 10 years. But instead of going back to his family, he said, you know what, I want to eat first. So he eats instead of going back to his family. And while he's doing that, we get a look at Emperor Pilaf, Mai, and Shu looking at some dusty balls on a table here. And then Pilaf reveals that these are not just dusty balls. These are the Black Star Dragon Balls, which were the original Dragon Balls when Kami and Piccolo were one the first time before they separated, and that these balls are supposed to be even more powerful. It's also revealed that they're actually in a mausoleum on the lookout, which apparently nobody knew that the Dragon Balls were there, which is weird anyways. But anyways, Pilaf finally gets the balls gathered here. He has them set up. He says the words to summon Shenron. And lo and behold, it's not green Shenron, but it's a big red Shenron, which I guess is supposed to be more evil or more powerful. Who knows? But we get this big red dragon, and Emperor Pilaf's kind of frightened. They're, Mai and all them are looking on terrified, but they're like, you know what? This is our chance. He's about to make his wish, and what do you think happens? Lo and behold, Goku just stumbles on out there. He's like, oh, he doesn't notice the big red dragon, but he sees them. He's like, I think I recognize you guys. Where do I know you from? And Pilaf not really recognizing Goku. Mai's like, you know who that is, right? That's that little kid that used to screw us up all the time and prevent us from winning. And Pilaf's like, oh no, kill him. They shoot missiles at him. Of course, it does nothing to Goku. He stops them. And Pilaf gets so angry at this, he says, you're always picking on us. You're 4 times my size. I wish you was a little kid again. And when he said that, bam, the dragon overheard it, made the wish, turned Goku into a little kid again. And Pilaf again screwed up his wish. And now we have a little kid Goku. And then we see Dende and Mr. Popo looking on stunned, and then we see the Dragon Balls separate and go all over the place in the sky. And then we get a telepathic message from King Kai, who has just sensed this. And he says, "Oh no, Goku, this is terrible news. You're going to have to gather these Dragon Balls to become your normal self again." Goku says, that ain't no big deal, not realizing these aren't the same Dragon Balls. These are the black Dragon Balls. And Mr. Popo reveals that these Dragon Balls don't just go on the Earth. They go all the way across the universe, and they could be anywhere, and it'll take a long time to find all of them. And Goku just kind of says, "Oh, so I'll just have to be a kid, and I'll just grow up. I ain't going to worry about it. I'm just going to wait until I grow up naturally." Not even caring about his family, not caring about anything else. Just it doesn't matter. Doesn't really care. Shrugs it off, takes off. The next scene we get is Pan. If you remember her, she was like 3 years old, I think, at the end of Dragon Ball Z, which is Gohan's daughter, Vidal's daughter. And now she's on her first date with some weird predator-like guy. I call him a predator guy because you look at him, and it looks like the guy that's like a senior in high school, the 18-year-old that's preying on like the 8th grader that's about to become a freshman. That's what it kind of reminded me of. But anyways, you can see clearly that he's kind of intimidated by her, probably because who her father is, and knows that she's a kick-ass person, like she's a karate champion, all that fun stuff. So it kind of comes off that she has a hard time connecting with people because they're intimidated by her, and that's the kind of sense we get from the scene. But anyway, so she's about to go on her date to the movies with this guy, and then all of a sudden she realizes that there's, it's barricaded off, she can't get to it, and there's a robbery taking place. At the same time this is going on, Goku's eating again. So he's stuffing his face at some restaurant that's nearby, and while there's gunshots going off, he gets, disrupted from his meal and decides, hey, I better go check that out. So he goes also, and so Pan's about to fight the robbers, and then Goku comes and is about to fight the robbers. And as Goku storms towards him, Pan stops him and says, "Hey, you're just a little kid. You're going to get hurt. Let me take care of it. I know what I'm doing. I'm strong." So she goes and she takes out the robbers. She goes back to her date and she's like, "Hey, let's go see our movie now." And of course he, uses the excuse, "Oh no, wait, I already seen this movie. I need to go wash my hair," kind of thing, so he can get out of the date. And then she gets upset about it. Goku approaches her to say, "You kicked ass." And all of a sudden they both recognize Pimp Roshi in the distance, hitting on all the girls. And they say, "Hey, Master Roshi." And then they kind of look at each other like, "Oh, we both know Master Roshi. What's up with that?" Not realizing that Goku is her grandfather and that is his granddaughter there. So anyways, Master Roshi comes over and says, "Hey, Pan." And then he starts talking to Goku, not realizing it's Goku. Goku revealing what happened to him. Now Pan knows that's his grandfather. Goku knows that's his granddaughter. And then there's some weirdness going on, like she doesn't want to believe it. And then we go to a funny part. We go back to, I guess, this is Goku's household or Gohan's household, somebody's house. And we see a crying Chi-Chi after seeing that Goku, the husband that's neglected her for 10 years apparently, is now here finally, but now he's a child. What is she supposed to do with this? She's wondering, and then she's upset that she's going to look so much older than him, and that she already looked older than him because he's a Saiyan and they age slower, and now she's going to have to wait for him to grow up, and she thinks that he did this on purpose just to do this to her. And he says, "No, I like being old. I didn't do it on purpose." And it was kind of funny. I laughed at that part, so that was humorous. So anyways, Goku just says he's going to stay a kid and he's just going to have to grow up because these Dragon Balls are all over the place. And then suddenly we get another telepathic message from King Kai, and King Kai says, "Yo, that ain't going to work. These Dragon Balls give off some negative energy after the wish was granted, and this negative energy is going to build up and just destroy the whole planet. So you're going to have to regather them and bring them back to the Earth, or the Earth is totaled and everybody's going to die." So that's where we're left off with the first episode. And I'll have to say I did enjoy the first episode. I loved having the English language because the actors were the same. I was a little worried that they would be different voices than what the original American actors, the voiceovers for the English were before, but it seemed like it was all the same people. Pilaf sounded like himself. I was worried about that. All them. Shu, all of them sounded like themselves. Goku, all the main characters on here. So I didn't notice anything weird about it. I thought I was going to get some kind of weird voice vibe or something, but it didn't happen. And I really like seeing Pilaf, the elderly old Pilaf, Mai, and Shu, in their old age, still trying to find them Dragon Balls and become powerful. And it was actually a pretty good opener for the series. So I'm gonna have to say that's a good start. So so the first episode, I'm definitely gonna say I give it an A and a score if I was gonna give it an A grade or any type of grade. It was nice. It was a nice little opener for the series. Episode 2 is called Pan Blasts Off. So we start the episode looking at Capsule Corp. We see a limo arrive and some executives standing outside. And lo and behold, the new president of Capsule Corp is Trunks. We then see him walk into Capsule Corp with a bunch of executive stooges following behind, telling him what to do. And apparently, Trunks is a ladies' man. All the women love him. They're talking about him. He finally gets to his office, sees a ton of paperwork, and says, hell no. This isn't for me. I'm not doing this. This isn't fun. He opens up the damn window and he says, I'm out of this place. Fuck it. And he flies off. So that's what he does. Then we go to Goten. We see him at home. He's talking on the phone to a chick. This is normal for a teenager to be trying to hook up, go on a date, whatever. But the funny thing is, his father, his deadbeat father he hasn't seen in 10 years, is just in the other room. He's not spending time with him, not talking to him. There's no interaction there. He's just like, I want to get with some chicks. This is what I want to do. Screw that deadbeat father. But just to be fair to Goku, we don't know if Goku was using instant transmission popping in and out in those 10 years, but we just know they haven't seen each other for a while. But we go to the kitchen, we see Gohan and Videl, and they're talking to Chi-Chi and Goku, and Gohan basically just says that he wants to go with Goku to help him find the Black Star Dragon Balls, and Chi-Chi loves this idea. She's like, cool, my husband that never spends time with his children, usually she'd be against Gohan going somewhere like that, but she's like, she's all for it. They can bond and have some time together. So that's what she goes with. She's like, all right with it. Well, Pan overhears this and is like, hey, I want to join you guys too. Take me, Daddy. Take me with you. And of course, Chi-Chi, Gohan, and Videl are all against it and tell her no. She gets upset. Of course, she's pissed. And then we actually take a look at Capsule Corp. We see Bulma and an interaction with Goku. This is the first time she's seen Goku in 10 years or whatever it's been as well. But she's like, oh, you're a kid again. You look just like you did when we first met. So there's a little throwback, heartwarming moment between them. But that's about it for that. And then we go outside and we see the entrance to Capsule Corp again. And in the bushes, there's some odd guy who's apparently looking for Bulma's daughter so he can kidnap her and then ransom her to them for money. That is the game plan. We go back into Capsule Corp and we see Pan asking Gohan if he can help her or help him work on the ship that they plan to take. He says, no, go talk to your mother. She'll need some help. She goes and asks her mother if she can help her. And Videl says, no, basically you're too little. And and Pan tries to help her anyway. She gets a little upset with her. Then she says, won't you go hang out with friends? You're just too little to be doing this stuff. Pan gets angry, kicks the side of the ship. And we see that something becomes loose on the outside of the ship. Not sure what that is, but it's important for later. She pushes a stove or whatever the hell that is in front of the hole to cover it up. Then she leaves Capsule Corp. The kidnappers see her through binoculars and say, hey, must be Bulma's daughter because she's leaving Capsule Corp. So he goes after her. We see Goku catch up with Pan and ask her if they can hang out and do something together. She declines because she says that he won't let her go with him to find the Dragon Balls. And just as that, she decides she's going to fly away. And the kidnapper jumps out to grab her, but grabs Goku instead. Goku, not even aware that there's something wrong with this, is like, oh no, I'm a boy, not a girl. And the kidnapper just says, okay, I'm going to take you anyways. So then we go on this little storyline. We find out there's two kidnappers that were trying to get Bulma's daughter so they could get money and ransom them back to her. And now they're assuming that Goku must be related to Bulma somehow, so they're going to try to use him for ransom. But lo and behold, they're having to buy him food, and they're spending all this money on him to keep him happy while they try to reach out and talk to him. So we have this guy calling Bulma right now, and he says, we got Goku. We want this much money or else. And she's like, Goku. She kind of laughs off like, oh, that's going to be more trouble for you than us. The phone gets disconnected, so they're going to try to call later. We see him at the amusement park on a roller coaster with Goku. He makes another phone call to Capsule Corp. This time he got porn stash Vegeta. And Vegeta says, I don't care what you're going to do with Goku. Do what do you want? I don't give a shit. So then they're like, okay, we must have got the wrong person. We're going to try to call again. So they're in the car this time. Goku says that he thinks it's time that he needs to go home. It's getting late. They said, well, we'll take you out to dinner. We just need to make one more phone call and we'll get you something to eat. So Goku's like, okay, but thinks it's a game. So he goes and finds the payphone himself, flies it back to them. They freak out because they see all this. He throws it down. They get in the car and they drive off and leave him behind. And he just thinks to himself, oh, they must have needed to leave. Didn't even realize the whole time that he was a victim. He was been kidnapped or anything. So that's Goku for you. But then we go back to see what exactly happened with Pan. She decided to go to her grandfather Satan's dojo. She beat the hell out of everybody, got rid of her frustration on the people there, and grandfather Satan did what any grandpa would do. He sees that his granddaughter's upset. He decides to take her to a coffee shop and talk about the problems. She explains that she's sick and tired of everybody treating her like a little child, that she is a grown up, and he says he understands totally, but then proceeds to treat her like a little kid, and she gets pissed off and decides that she's going to do something about this. So then, meanwhile, we have Trunks leaving work again. He's caught up by Vegeta with the porn stash, saying that we can do this the easy way or the hard way. And he is then seen dragging Goten and Trunks, telling them that their parents think they become pansies and that they need to get out there and toughen up. So they're going to go and search for the Dragon Balls with Goku and Gohan. And they're reluctantly not wanting to do this, especially Goten, who's arguing, saying, oh, Bulma, or not Bulma, he says, Chi-Chi will never, make me do that. And then Vegeta reveals that it's actually Chi-Chi's idea for him to go. So then we see Goten and Trunks inside the Capsule Corp waiting for the ship to get ready. And then we get a little discussion here from Videl and Gohan, where Videl asks, where's Pan at? And he's like, I think she's with Bully, which is the first time we see Bulma and Vegeta's daughter, which is standing next to Vegeta. And another thing, other than her not having any conversation, I don't even remember much about her being in the show, but what's up with Vegeta's haircut? I thought Saiyans couldn't get haircuts. I thought their hair couldn't be trimmed or something. I don't know. But anyways, we go on to the ship now, and we see Trunks and Goku investigating, just kind of looking around where they're going to be staying. And they hear a noise. They go into basically the cockpit of the ship, and they see Pan in there, and they say, Pan, you shouldn't be in here playing. And she basically says, I'll show you about playing. And she's like, bam, she hits the ignition button, blasts the ship up in the air, leaving everybody behind, including Gohan and then the happy Goten, who can now go on his date. And as the ship is taking off, we see a part of it fall off onto the ground. Bulma picks that piece up, looks at it with a concerned look, and is like, uh-oh. And that is the end of this episode. So I will say, it was kind of just a fun little episode. I mean, it was just, they had the little kidnapping storyline with Goku, which was just for like little fun laughs, you know what I mean? And then they had the more character-driven part of it where they're kind of developing Pan's character. We talked about her in the first episode where she is kind of an outcast with people because they don't know she has grandfather is Mr. Satan, which is very famous. I'm sure they know about Gohan somewhat as well. So she comes from a family, right? So she's kind of an outcast with that as well. People are intimidated by her because she's strong and she's like a karate champion and she's only 13. So you got Pan that her peers are afraid of, basically, and then you got her parents and her siblings or whatever that are well, not siblings, but her uncle and all them, everybody else. It's kind of like, you're too young, you're too little, you can't do this, you can't do that. So she's just fed up with it. So there's a nice little story driven with her, and then ultimately we find out how and who are the main characters of the story are going to be, which is obviously going to be Trunks, Goku, and Pan are the three main stars of this series, at least this first part. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But anyways, I would say the second episode was pretty decent as well. I enjoyed it. It wasn't bad. Episode 3, Terra on a Mecha. So this episode starts out in space. We see the spaceship carrying Pan, Trunks, and Goku. Now the first scene's a little weird. We have Trunks chasing Pan around the spaceship, trying to get an override key from her that he can use to take the ship back home. Now she refuses to give it to him because she doesn't want to go home. He says she's too young to be on the ship and needs to go back. He finally catches her, and she proceeds to take the override key and put it down her shirt. And then Trunks is looking dumbfounded at this, and she says, with a smile on her face, and then she makes a kind of flirtatious grin, and she says, it's your move, right? And I don't know how to, I mean, this is kind of odd behavior. We then see Chris Hansen walk out of the shadows and he said, "Hey, Trunks, I need you to sit down. We need to talk about this." No, that didn't happen. But it's weird. It's just weird to see that in a cartoon, I guess. I mean, there is a lot of sus things that happened in Dragon Ball, the original series, which when I was a kid I didn't really look into, but then when you watch it as an adult and you see like the unedited versions and stuff, you're like, oh, these are kind of messed up, right? And that's kind of how I felt about this. I actually went as far to be like, okay, I see this a lot in these Japanese animes. I'm going to look up the age of consent just to because I know it's got to be low. It's got to be low. It's got to be a low age. So I looked it up, and up until 2023, this just happened a couple years ago. This is 2025. We're talking 2023. Japan just changed their age of consent from the age of 13, which is what Pan would be in this anime cartoon, to age 16. So it's still kind of bad, but it's a lot better than 13, I guess. Very weird. Very weird. And I guarantee you, just to sound a little, weird about this, I guarantee you tourism to Japan has changed and went down since 2023 because there's a lot of messed up people out there. But anyways, let's get back to what matters here. And go to Earth, and we see a concerned Chi-Chi looking up at the sky saying, "Goku, please bring our granddaughter home safe." And then we see Bulma in her lab looking at the chip that fell off the ship, trying to run it through her computer system to figure out what it actually belongs to and what it does. And then we go back to the ship where there is some turbulence going on. Everybody's been thrown to one side of the ship. They think they've been hit by something, so they're looking out the window, and quickly Trunks realizes what has happened. He sees the part that has fell and detached itself from the ship and is floating off in space. It is indeed the stabilizer that keeps the ship whole in space so it doesn't fall apart. And then at the same time, Bulma is realizing this on Earth, finally. And the only thing that can happen now is they're going to have a crash landing. He needs to find a planet to crash on. We see the ship starting to destabilize, and you see the electricity and everything. And then we see Pan crying out loud for her mommy. So she's indeed a kid still. And then we finally see Trunks enter an atmosphere of a local planet, and he's trying to prepare for a crash landing here. And he is successful at crash landing the plane without killing everybody, but they still have to find a replacement stabilizer chip, so they decide to go to the nearest town. Upon arriving to the nearest town, they are pretty much bombarded by the local merchants who are aggressively, basically stampeding over towards them. These merchants begin giving them all sorts of items, putting items on them, and then they proceed to try to charge them for the items that they're forcing upon them, trying to get money. Kind of greedy. That's what we're looking at here. Well, they basically escape from the merchants, and they go to the local hotel, and they tell the hotel service guy that, hey, this is what's been going on. These merchants are crazy. And he's like, oh, yeah, they are. He's like, you got to watch out for them, but don't worry, you're safe here. Well, they end up going up to their hotel room, which is the most expensive suite in the entire place. Trunks sits on the bed and ends up watching a television broadcast where it's talking about the local dictator, I guess, named Don Key. And he kind of cult following looking on there. And then we have Pan that runs out and points towards the shower saying, the water won't turn off. What do I do? Trunks tries to get up to help her, but he gets pulled down because he's actually chained to the bed suddenly. And then we have Goku run out with a bunch of food piling up on top of him. The fridge is just shooting out food. And then Pan mentions that she noticed that there is a meter in the shower that just keeps going up, and up because they're being charged for everything in the house. Trunks then sees that the bed also has for him laying on the bed and being chained to it, there's a fee that's going up. They see it on the TV. They see it on the ceiling fan. Of course, the refrigerator, everything. They're getting charged for everything. Like, we got to get the hell out of here. So they end up running out and skipping out on the hotel. They're not going to pay that shit. And they end up out in the rain. Pan is leaning against a wall, and she ends up falling through the wall into somebody's home. And the family's very friendly and offers everybody to come inside out of the rain and join them. So they do. And then Pan begins to talk about how horrible it's been since they got there, and everybody seems very greedy. And the family explains that the merchants are not trying to be greedy. They're just trying to survive, and the only way to do so is to be that way. And that the reason it's like this is because their rent is so high because of the dictator, Don Key, is charging them so much just to live there. And then suddenly they hear an alarm, and robots show up at the home, and they tell them that the rent is past due and that they're going to be taking their home basically. And exactly that's what the robots start to do. They start packing up the walls, the roof, everything away from these people. So we just have a sad moment here where they basically just lose their home, and they have two small children, and they're just kind of like, well, as long as we have our family, we'll be okay. And then that is about it for this scene. Our heroes begin making their way back to the spaceship. Pan and Goku both want to help the people of the planet. However, Trunks says they need to focus on their own agenda and saving the Earth and finding all the Dragon Balls. Pan then mentions that maybe he should use the Dragon Radar to see if there's a Dragon Ball on this planet. So he pulls out the Dragon Radar, and instantly the Dragon Radar is pulled away from him onto the ground. Everybody's looking, and they see a robot next to the Dragon Radar. The robot then begins to basically eat the Dragon Radar, and Trunks is infuriated and grabs the robot on the ground and demands it give him the Dragon Radar. The robot then leaps into the air and states that the Dragon Radar is now a part of him and he won't be able to give it back. And as this is going on, Pan notices their ship is being basically towed away, pulled away by something. And as they're looking towards the ship being dragged away, the robot escapes and runs off. Goku is able to capture the robot. This concludes episode 3. So basically they lost their ship, but were able to capture the robot that stole their Dragon Radar or ate it or whatever he did. And yeah, so I don't know. There's not a whole lot that happened in this episode, but I mean, it is leading up to obviously a confrontation, because I'm assuming, because as they spoke before, that the Don Key takes people's ships, so I'm assuming he's the one that had them grab their ship, and they're going to have to go back and get their ship now, and probably doing so, they're going to end up saving the people of this planet one way or another, and maybe finding a Dragon Ball along the way. Who knows? But it was an alright episode. It wasn't the best so far, but it was okay. I liked it. Episode 4, The Most Wanted List. So this picks up right after the events of episode 3. Our heroes are in the desert. They're looking for their ship that was just taken from them. They assume that Don Key, the dictator, is responsible for taking their ship. So Goku has the idea of using instant transmission to get to it. However, in this body form as a child, he's unable to use it successfully, and it fails. We then go to actual Don Key's fortress, where we actually see Don Key for the first time in person. And of course, he's being a gluttonous pig, eating all this fancy food while his people starve, like a dictator does. We're introduced to some new characters, Sheila and Gale, as well as Legic. And basically, they're just saying that they did successfully capture and obtain the ship that they found out in the desert. And they decide they're going to basically dismantle it for parts. It's now nighttime outside the fortress, and our heroes finally arrive there after having walked the whole entire way. And they're trying to decide where their ship would be, if Don Key even has their ship. And then suddenly, Goku spots it in the distance, and it's a good distance away, so they decide in order to infiltrate the fortress, they're going to have to be stealthy about it because it's surrounded by guards everywhere. So then we get a little scene where they're crawling around and hiding from these guards, sneaking around, doing all that fun stuff. And then finally, they reach where they're only a few feet away from their ship, and they're trying to figure out how to get to it without being seen. We then see some nearby guards that are having a drink, and the one ends up throwing his empty aluminum can up in the air, which then strikes poor Pan in the head, and she bursts into tears. Okay, I'm going to have to stop it right here for a second. I have to kind of call bullshit on this scene just because I understand it's a cartoon. It's most likely made for children and not adults like myself, and you shouldn't overthink these things, but this is an empty aluminum can. Okay, it's not directly tossed at her. It's thrown up in the air. It bounces off of her head, and she's wearing a bandana. She's supposed to be this badass, hardcore karate person kicking everybody's ass. She's like, what, 1/4 Saiyan or something? This makes no sense why this would affect her where she would burst into tears and start crying so loudly. Makes no sense at all. But anyways, let's get back into the actual review. So she begins to burst into tears, as I stated, and luckily Trunks runs over and begins to cover her mouth before she gets too loud and alerts the guards. He ends up pulling her over to the side with him while he's covering up her mouth, and he happens to hit something and knocks, it looks like a brick or even a rock loose, which ends up hitting him in the head. And then the end result of that is he falls on his backpack, which has the robot in it, and the robot itself starts making beeping noises, which then does actually alert the guards, and then it's time to get into a fight. So that's what we're heading towards. They all prepare, and then they just start kicking the shit out of all these guards while they're trying to reach their ship. And then we see Pan get inside the machine that the ship is sitting on. That's the thing that they used to haul it earlier. And she begins to drive it recklessly, but she's driving it. And the guards are moving out of the way. She ends up getting Goku and Trunks to jump on its roof. And then as she's going, they are attacked by Gale and Sheila with a dual energy beam as they are sending their energy blast towards our heroes. Goku sends his own energy blast towards them, which overpowers theirs. And then ultimately, Legic has to come and swipe the energy blast out of the way and redirect it out of the fortress. And then we see a close-up of Legic where he knows that they're Saiyans. He says they're Saiyans. So we get that somehow he knows. We don't know why he knows or how he knows, but he knows they are indeed Saiyans. And that is about all that happens. They end up escaping with the ship in tow. And then we see a angry Don Key inside as he is yelling and blaming Gale and Sheila for the mistake. As he's telling them how crappy they are and how they suck, he demands that they pay for the lost ship that has now been retaken by the proper owners, of course. But then he also tells them that they need to hunt down and capture the people that stole it. With our heroes, they now have their ship back, but now it needs more repairs because due to the escape, there were some more damages that were done. And now they're going to have to head back into the city and try to get the parts that they need to fix those damages. Now, I'm going to stop it right here again with my thoughts. Okay, their company is literally called Capsule Corp, and that's because they make capsules to store their ships and houses and all their vehicles and all their stuff, right, is stored in these capsules. Okay, where the hell's the capsule for their ship? I don't remember anywhere in the information throughout the episodes we watched so far why there wouldn't be a capsule. I don't remember them mentioning, oh, well, we can't fit this into a capsule, which wouldn't make any sense. It's not that big of a ship, right? I don't know. It's very confusing. Why don't they use a capsule? This would have prevented their ship from being taken the first time, for one. And secondly, they just keep leaving it in the desert for people to come along and find it. So yeah, there's my complaint. Okay, back onto the review. They arrive in town, but every time they try to speak to a merchant or merchants see them, they run away from them screaming, and then they all begin to run off into their houses and locking and closing down the shops until there's no one left but our heroes in the middle of the town, and they're wondering what is going on, why is everybody running away from us? And then they see up on the walls around the houses, there's a bunch of wanted posters of all three of them with rewards. So indeed, Don Key decided they are criminals and has now posted their pictures up all over the place of them just looking like ruffians that are going to murder you in your sleep. So they hear sirens and they hear police officers and they decide they better take off because they don't want to fight the police and give themselves even more of a bad reputation. So that is what they do. After escaping the police, they're trying to figure out how to get the parts for their ship and where to go because they're now stuck in the rain again. And all of a sudden, the robot goes off and indicates that there are a bunch of people coming close to them. And then we see a herd of police officers arriving in cars, as well as Gale and Sheila and their tank-like vehicle. And that is the end of the episode as they are hiding away. All right, so my final thoughts on this episode. Now, there was a lot of action. They did have, an escape scene. They also had a battle scene. We were introduced to several new villains. I particularly liked Legic. I believe is how you say his name, Legic. He seems interesting, kind of mysterious. Seems like the more powerful of the group. I really don't understand why they followed Don Key. I always want to say Donkey, but Don Key. He just, I don't know if the guy actually has any power. He apparently is the one that's the dictator running the show, but it seems like his bodyguards that he treats like shit could probably easily kill him. I don't know. I guess we'll find out more in the next episode. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. It wasn't a bad episode. I don't, I'm noticing inconsistencies with different things, which I'm mentioning in there, and my own thoughts. But other than that, it's been pretty good. It's not been bad. Episode 5, Goku versus Legic. So this episode picks up where the last one left off. We have police going all over the city looking for Goku, Trunks, and Pan, and they're hiding up on the rooftop, trying to stay away from the police and trying to figure out how they're going to get away and get to their ship and everything else. But they are eventually discovered, and the police find them. So they're trying to figure out how to get away from the police while they're stuck on this rooftop. And the police are now surrounding the building, and they're being led by Gale and Sheila. And as they're trying to figure out what to do, they decide they're going to start roof hopping. So they're jumping from roof to roof until they fall through one of the roofs that they're hopping on. They are then confronted by the family that owns the home and called thieves, as they're recognized on the wanted posters. And Pan tries to explain that they're not thieves, that it was actually their ship that they took. And she's basically cut off by Trunks, who tells them that he is sorry that they fell through the roof and that they will leave now. So they start to leave. As they are leaving, Goku's stomach growls, and he mentions that he hasn't eaten in 2 days and he's starving. The elderly couple feel sorry for him, and they tell them that they don't have to leave right away, and they begin talking to him, and they say that they're actually impressed that they stood up to Don Key and got their ship back. They said they wish they would have done that because they too are not originally from there, and they had their ship taken away from them. They mentioned that Don Key outlawed people from having ships and being able to leave. They're basically slaves, but not slaves at the same time. And that's how he keeps control of people, so they don't just leave. They're just stuck there. They offer Goku and Trunks and Pan to eat something. So they all sit down at the table. And Pan asks why they don't just rebel and fight back. And they mention that his bodyguards, Don Key's bodyguards, are more powerful than entire armies. So they wouldn't stand a chance if they tried to do so. Pan then stands up from the table and says she's going to do something about it and go after Don Key. Goku and Trunks join her. As they're about to leave, they say their farewells, and they head out the door. And then we see the next scene. We see Gale and Sheila surrounded by a police force. And then we see the spotlight on Trunks, Pan, and Goku as they're walking towards them. We see a fearful Sheila and Gale as Trunks, Pan, and Goku approach them. However, surprisingly enough, Trunks, Goku, and Pan surrender and offer to be arrested. So we see Pan, Goku, and Trunks all being arrested and taken away into a police car. We're now at Don Key's palace. He's counting his loads of cash because he's an asshole like that. And all of a sudden, he's interrupted almost instantly. And in the doorway, we see Trunks, Pan, and Goku. And they basically come in and say, hey, the gig is up. You're done. Surrender. Treat your people right. And he says, how the hell did you guys get in here? Guards, guards, guards. Nobody responds. They said, we already took care of your guards. And Sheila and Gale, they're done. He checks his footage and sees that his entire guards and Gale and Sheila are all beat up and finished off. They're not going to be doing anything for him. And then Pan says, it's time for you to surrender or I'm going to kick your ass. She lunges towards him. He traps her in some type of magnetic force field type thing that's like shocking her. Trunks and Goku can't get her out of this. They can't figure out how to get her out of this. And all of a sudden, Don Key turns on these turrets that are apparently all lined up in his little palace area here. And they start shooting at Trunks and Goku. And then after the dust clears, of course, Trunks and Goku are not affected by bullets. It doesn't hurt them. It doesn't matter. And then all of a sudden we see Legic approach. And he says those conventional weapons are not going to hurt them. True warriors like them. So he said it'd have to be like someone like him to take care of them. So Don Key basically says, yo, I need you to help me. Can you kill them? And Legic says, yo, I'm not going to kill them for you, but I'm going to do it out of my own pleasure. I'm going to take care of them. So all of a sudden after that is said, Trunks tries to attack Legic. Legic smacks him one time and Trunks flies back and it's like one hit. Trunks got one-hitted. I guess Trunks is just that weak now. He can't do much. But Trunks is pretty much out of commission here. Goku goes over to him and tells Trunks to leave Legic up to him and for him to try to help out Pan and see if he can figure out how to get her to safety. So this is when the battle is about to begin. Okay, so the Goku versus Legic is about to start here. And this is actually the first actual, like, I guess, major battle. I don't know if you want to consider it major or not. But it's like the first real battle of the show on the 5th episode here. And, you know, the whole character, the Legic character is pretty cool anyways. But I get, like, Piccolo first season of Dragon Ball Z vibes from him. Like, he's not all the way evil, you know, like, but he's not really good either. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of vibes I get him. I get Piccolo vibes from him for some reason. He kind of, and he has like a tail. He's a little weird looking. He's got like the shoulder spikes, which is really cool, which we'll see in a minute what he can do with those spikes. But he shoots this like multiple beam energy blast there, right here. So he can pull his spikes. They grow right back. He can pull them out and turn them into any type of weapon he wants. So it's like his special ability or something. I thought that was kind of a cool thing going on there. And then he's trying to use the swords. And then at this point, it's kind of like an evenly matched battle between him and Goku. Like, no one's really winning. Like, Goku's getting his ass kicked here and there. They're both, you know, delving it out to each other. Now he's getting thrown through the palace, back and forth. And we got Don Keys in there going... Is it Don Key? I keep saying Keys. Is it Don Keys or Don Key? Either way, he's in there crying about it. Now he's got a spear-looking weapon. And here's where the excitement happens. So Goku's telling him, "Oh, you know, you're pretty good." And he's like, "Don't, you know, insult me." And he calls him a Saiyan. And he's like, "Oh shit, he knows what I am." So then Goku's like, "All right, you asked for it. I'm going to show you what I'm about." And then we get our first transformation in the series where we see Kid Goku turn into a Super Saiyan. So I thought that was pretty cool. Because I'm pretty sure out of the other episodes, I don't remember him going Super Saiyan. So after this happens, the match is pretty simple. Makes me think that Legic's not as strong as maybe they could have made him. But who knows? Maybe he'll pop up in a later episode or something. Because he is definitely not dead here. So he just kicks him down. And then we get a Kamehameha wave. And of course Goku's going to easily overpower poor old Legic there. And then he takes off the top of the roof of the palace officially. See Legic laying there defeated, and then we got Goku coming down saying Goku things like that was an awesome battle, I enjoyed it, we should battle each other again. And then we have Legic looking at him saying, "Sure kid, you're crazy, but we'll battle each other again sometime." And then we see Pan and Trunks confronting Don Key, saying they're going to deal with him. And then he tries to offer Legic more money to help him out, but he refuses and kicks him instead. And then Legic begins to leave, and he tells Goku next time he meets and they fight, he's going to win. Of course, Goku says that he's going to win, and they share a little smile at each other before Legic officially leaves. And then we go back to Don Key, who's bent over in agony after being kicked by Legic, pleading for his life. And then Pan, Trunks, and Goku tell him that he needs to free his people, not charge them rent anymore, and allow them to leave the planet if they wish to. He reluctantly agrees. We then see the city, and we see Pan and the rest of them carrying this big, huge black block-looking thing. I wasn't even sure what this was when I first saw it, but apparently it's almost like a safe box, a security box or something. But anyway, she says she has a surprise for everybody, so all the civilians are gathering. And then she reveals what exactly is inside there, and it is everybody's contracts that they had with Don Key to pay their extreme rent rates, and tells them that they're no longer going to be charged rent, and they're also allowed to leave the planet, and if they had a ship, they will get it back for free and don't have to worry about anything. All the civilians are so happy and excited about this, and we got Pan just so pleased with herself that she liberated these people. Then we go back to their spaceship, and we find out Don Key gave them the parts they needed to fix their ship as well. Goku points out that the robot is running away, and Pan runs after him and starts stomping on him, telling him that she's going to dismantle him. He pleads for his life and says, "Please don't dismantle me." And surprisingly, Trunks comes over and helps the poor robot from Pan's destruction. And this is funny because you think about future Trunks fighting androids and robots, but we'll push that to the side. But he says this robot may not be like our lives because Pan is saying this robot's just a dumb robot, doesn't matter. We can rip him apart, do whatever we want to him because he's stupid and he's not really alive, basically is what she's saying. And then we got Trunks here saying that he may not be like us, his life may be different, but he is, the fact that he's pleading for his life, he is a real living thing kind of idea. And then it's revealed as he's trying to dust off the robot that the robot is indeed integrated officially with the Dragon radar, and they can now use him to detect Dragon Balls. And then they get a signal on there that there is a Dragon Ball in a nearby world. So they decide they better take off to this planet and get this Dragon Ball. So that's where they're going. And I'll have to say, overall, I think this episode was probably my favorite out of all of them so far. It had a lot of action, had a little bit of drama. You got some little sad moments there. You feel for the people that are suffering. And then you got comedy elements, and I don't know. It was a good episode overall. So I'd say out of the 5, this has got to be my favorite thus far. But yeah, so that's what I think of this episode. Pretty decent. Episode 6, Like Pulling Teeth. So we start out this episode with our heroes approaching a planet. The robot detects there's a Dragon Ball, and he also states that the planet is habitable. We arrive on the planet to see it's very Earth-like. We got trees, we got hills, we got land and water. Very green looking. But there is one catch. As we see, Trunks is trying to land the spaceship. He lands on what he thinks is land, but turns out to be a ginormous turtle-like alligator thing that has a shell that looks like a mountain. And it quickly tries to eat them, of course. They luckily are able to maneuver and escape around several of these alligator-like creatures that try to take them out. And Trunks finds a nice place to land the spaceship. We see Goku riding a giant beetle, having the time of his life. And then Pan decides she wants to dress up like an insect. She's got antennas now. She's got some wings. She's like, "Hey, Goku, look at me. Ain't I fancy?" He's like, "Be yourself, queen. Do as you like." And she's like, "I will." So she goes and she finds these butterflies flying. She's like, "Oh, how cool is that? I want to join them." Trunks is being the only adult saying, "Hey, we need to go find this Dragon Ball to save people's lives." And Goku's like, "You know what? Don't worry about her. Let her go do her thing. We'll go find the Dragon Ball." So that's exactly what happens. We see Pan flying with the butterflies, having the time of her life as well. She lands on a giant flower, decides she's going to take a load off. Laying there, she looks like she's about to take a nap. And then suddenly she's disturbed by the sound of buzzing as she looks and sees a ton of bees approaching her. These bees seem to be not too friendly as they grab a hold of her and drag her off of the flower and fly her off into the distance. We then go back to Trunks and Goku, which are hanging out by an apple tree, supposedly where the Dragon Ball is supposed to be nearby. Trunks spots the Dragon Ball at the bottom of the apple tree, and just as he's about to pick up this Dragon Ball, and giant apple, lands right on top of the damn thing, stopping them from being able to get it. So as they're about to try to lift up this giant apple, a bird swoops down and grabs that sumbitch, and they're like, "Oh no, man, we almost died right there, but we're all right. It's just a giant-ass bird swooping down wanting to eat an apple." And then they look in the spot where the Dragon Ball was underneath the apple. They see a crater and no Dragon Ball, and they're like, "What the hell happened?" Then they look up and they notice on the apple that the bird has grabbed. I don't know how they can see so far, but they see the Dragon Ball is stuck to the apple. Then, as they're looking at that, a giant walks by them, and we see the bird again with the apple, and all of a sudden, the apple was dropped from the bird into a giant's hands, and then we find out this bird is just a pet of this giant, and now the apple is definitely in the hands of a big beastie of a man there. So Goku and Trunks are like, "Hey, let's go get that giant." Then they hear a screaming noise, which happens to be Pan, and Trunks is like, "We need to go help Pan," and Goku's like, "Nah, don't worry about that bitch. We need to go worry about getting the Dragon Ball." Trunks is like, "No, we got to save her." And he's like, all right, I'll go with you. Because Goku doesn't really care about his granddaughter, right? He's like, she can do what the hell she wants. die, live, doesn't matter. Anyway, so we see the bees have now taken poor Pan into their hive. She's looking around terrified as she sees hatchlings of the bees, and then she decides, hey, these are actually pretty cute, and decides she wants to hang out with them for a little bit as she's squeezing and hugging these cute little baby bees. And then we go back to Trunks, who thinks he spots poor Pan in a spider's nest about to be devoured by a vicious spider. As they try to help it, Goku kind of is a distraction to the spider as Trunks kicks the spider down, defeating this beastie giant spider. And then Trunks unravels the cobweb, or the string, whatever you want to call it, the cobweb wrapped around, revealing that this is not Pan. It is indeed a bee. Actually, the queen bee. We'll find out. We then see Pan in the beehive receiving honey from all the different bees. She realizes that they think that she's their queen, and she's like, screw these bees. I don't want that responsibility. I'm out of here. She takes off out of the beehive. She's then chased down by a bunch of bees as she's trying to escape them. She hits headfirst into Goku, and then she sees that Trunks is carrying the queen bee and says, why? Is that my replacement? And he's like, no, she's hurt. We're helping her out. Then they're surrounded by the bees, and they're terrified. Like, oh, what are we going to do, even though the queen bee's right here? But what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And then we see Pan. She says, I'm sick of this mistaken identity. I'm going to reveal myself. She rips off her antennas, revealing that she's not actually a bee. And then we see the queen bee rise up and fly finally out off of Trunks' shoulders. The bees decide, hey, this is our queen, and they take off. That is the end of the mistaken identity thing we have going on here. Everybody's back to normal. Then they're like, hey, we need to go actually find this Dragon Ball. But how do we do that? They see that the Dragon radar is not working correctly, because we find out after Pan smacks the shit out of him that he's not broken, but he is low on battery because he needs to eat metal in order to energize, so he can't actually detect the Dragon Ball. But hey, Goku senses and smells fish being cooked, and they're thinking, hey, that must be the giant that has the apple, because who else would be cooking a giant fish so close by? So they go and they find the giant fish cooking and see the giant surrounded by animals, as well as a stack of apples. So they decide they're going to try to sneak over to the apples to find the one that has the Dragon Ball attached to it. They finally get to this, and they spot that the Dragon Ball on the top of the stack has the apple on top of the stack has the Dragon Ball. And then the giant reaches down and grabs that exact apple that they need to get. And he decides, hey, I'm going to eat this sumbitch. They look on in horror as he devours the entire apple, realizing he is now ingesting the Dragon Ball. He spits the core out right between Trunks and Pan. Pan then realizes that the only way they're getting this Dragon Ball is to wait for him to shit it out, and she's terrified at the idea of having to go through this giant's shit. And Trunks says, it looks like we're not going to be able to get this Dragon Ball right away. How about we wait until nature takes its course and come back later? And all of a sudden they hear the giant making this god-awful roaring noise and pain. They look over at him like, what's going on? Goku flies up and says, yo, giant, why are you making this noise? Are you okay? Are you in pain? He then notices in the giant's teeth, he has a cavity that indeed has the Dragon Ball stuck inside of it. Goku flies into the giant's mouth, tries to open up his jaw and have Trunks get the Dragon Ball. Trunks is like, hell no, I'm not going in his mouth. And Goku's like, the only thing I can do now is, of course, a Kamehameha wave to the tooth in the mouth to get the Dragon Ball. And he knocks the tooth out with the Kamehameha wave. He flies out of the giant's mouth and grabs the tooth, and then reaches in and pulls out the 4-star Black Dragon Ball. So there it is. They got their first Dragon Ball right here. He looks back at the giant. He says, hey, here's your tooth. Throws it to him, and then waves goodbye to the giant. The giant, not angry because they basically did his dental work for him, waves back happily. Hey, I'll see you next time kind of thing. Goodbye. So there we go. They decide to leave the planet after getting their first Dragon Ball, and they're just overexcited. We see Pan holding the first time ever holding a Dragon Ball. She's so excited. They then praise the robot for being able to detect the Dragon Ball successfully, and they decide to name him Gyro. And that is the end of episode 6. I enjoyed this episode. It was laid back. It was fun. Pretty entertaining. I enjoyed the surrounding, the background, the nature of it all. And yeah, it was just laid back and fun. Kind of reminded me of some of the original Dragon Ball episodes where it was just more about the adventure and just, quirky little stuff here and there. It was alright. Episode 7, Trunks the Bride. So this episode starts us off with Gero detecting a Dragon Ball on a nearby planet. And of course, our heroes want to go to that planet and get the Dragon Ball. And I think this is the first time they've successfully landed the ship on a planet without any incident. So plus there for Trunks being able to pilot finally. But anyways, they arrive and detect the Dragon Balls at a nearby village. So they go to the village and they see a crowd of villagers gathered around. So they ask the villagers, hey, is there something wrong? The villagers say, yes, Tsunami has come. And before they can figure out who Tsunami is, they do see the Dragon Ball they're looking for, which one of the villagers is using as like a hair accessory or something. And instead of being polite and going over and talking to her, they decide to push through all the other villagers that are standing around and interrupt her when she's obviously upset about something. But who cares? They're worrying about their own selves. But they do tell them that they are sorry for being rude. However, they need the Dragon Ball because it'll save millions of people on their planet. And the villagers reply that their planet's actually under attack, I guess, as well, or is under threat, and that they can't focus on somebody else's planet right now. And they're like, well, maybe we can help you guys. And they're like, all right, so they invite them to dinner, and then we have the village elder here telling them about this threat that they have, this Tsunami character, which they call a god. And they say they offer him all these golds and treasures and food, and it's just not enough now. Now he wants a bride. And they mention that he's a god because he can wiggle his whiskers he has, and it can cause earthquakes. The story is interrupted by the villagers screaming that Tsunami is here. So we see them in fright, and then finally Tsunami arrives on scene, and then it's revealed that the village elder's daughter, Lane, which is the one with the Dragon Ball, is indeed the chosen one to be his bride because they have no other options. We then see Tsunami threatening the village, saying if he doesn't get his bride right now, that he is going to destroy the village with an earthquake. He then wiggles his whiskers, and an earthquake starts. We have villagers hiding and screaming, hiding under tables. We have our heroes bouncing off the floor from the earthquake. And then we see Lane run out there to help her village and give herself as the bride to Tsunami. He then tells her that he accepts her as his bride, but he wants her to get a dress, and then he'll be back tomorrow to marry her. She then faints on the ground, and then we see our heroes at her bedside. Pan then asks them if they'd be willing to give them the Dragon Ball in exchange for them taking care of Tsunami for them. Of course, they all agree. They're like, yeah, take care of Tsunami. You can have this Dragon Ball. And then Doma, which is Lane's fiance, tries to step up, but he's like, let me defend my woman. Let me help you guys take care of Tsunami. They all agree. Pan says she already has a plan in mind and asks Lane if she can use her wedding dress. And Lane obviously agrees for her to use the wedding dress. And then we see Pan trying to get Goku to wear the dress, and then explains her plan is to pass Goku off as Lane to Tsunami. And then they're going to wait until he's comfortable, and then they're going to use a pair of scissors on him. And it's a funny moment because then Trunks' reaction's like, oh, isn't that a little too much? A little extreme, isn't it? Because he's thinking they're going to castrate him. And then Goku's like, no, we're not going to use the scissors for that. It's you cut his whiskers, right? And of course, Pan's like, yeah, let's cut his whiskers. And then they realize Goku's not going to look good in the dress because he's too little. And they basically forced Trunks to wear the dress. And then they gave Trunks a whole new makeover to look just like Lane, with the little tattoo on her face and the hair, the wig, everything. And of course, Lane is very happy that they're doing this for her and telling them how much it means to her and her village, that they're going to help them. And then Doma comes with the scissors and says, we got your back, just make sure that you pass yourself off as Lane, talking to Trunks, of course. And then we see another villager give Pan a wine bottle, or whatever you want to call that. It has alcohol in it that they're going to try to use to get him comfortable, as they said. Tsunami finally arrives and looks down Trunks and says, you look different than you did last time I saw you. And Trunks tries to play it off, says, no, it's just a wedding dress. And then it kind of leaves there as if Tsunami's going to buy that this is Lane, or if he's going to figure them out. And that is the end of the episode. My final thoughts on this episode, I definitely got like Oolong vibes from Dragon Ball when Goku first meets Oolong and he's like transforming into all these different beasts and things, basically to kidnap child brides, I think it was. It's something disturbing like that, if I remember correctly. But that's kind of what I was thinking of when I first was watching this episode. I'm like, okay, so he's trying to get a bride from a village, and it just kind of made me think of Oolong. And I'm like, I wonder if this guy is actually just transformed into this beast, or if it's actually a beast. Who knows? But that's kind of my final thought on that. I thought it was a decent episode. I didn't mind it. It was pretty good. It did remind me of that Oolong episode from Dragon Ball. Episode 8, Whisker Power. So this episode picks up where the last one left off. We have Tsunami trying to get a closer look at Trunks. He asks Trunks if they will take off their dress, and Trunks refuses, saying that he is a lady and will only do that in private. And Tsunami says, all right, well, let me take you to my special place where we can get a closer look. The rest of the heroes are falling behind as Tsunami is heading to his special place. We arrive at his special place, which appears to be a pond, but in actual, it's under the pond. So we see Tsunami dive in the water with Trunks as he heads towards his secret lair under the water. We arrive in the secret lair, and then Tsunami says to Trunks that he is all wet, so he needs to get himself changed into something more comfortable. So then we go into the heroes looking to see where they went. They're not sure where Tsunami went. They find the flower that Trunks was holding and realize he may have went underwater. So then we get a funny part here where Goku strips down to get naked to jump in the water, and we get a total sickened Pan who says, Grandpa, you're disgusting, you're gross, put your clothes on. And then we get Goku saying, why are you grossed out? We used to take baths together all the time. And she said, that's not true. And he said, yes, it is. And she's like, that's when I was little. This part was just very funny. I had to mention it. Goku then dives into the pond where he discovers there are tunnels and figures that must be where Tsunami took Trunks. We then go back to a frantic Trunks who's trying to figure out how to get out of this mess. And unbeknownst to him, he drops his wig on the floor. We then see Tsunami, who has brought in Trunks a dress to change into, discovering that it's not actually Lane. Trunks realizes his wig has fallen off and figures that this is going to be a big issue. However, Tsunami picks him up and says, I love short-haired girls, and everything is peachy between them, I guess. It was a pretty funny moment. But anyways, we go back to, we see Goku and Pan and Doma swimming towards the lair. We then go to the wedding feast that Tsunami prepared for Trunks, and Trunks figures this is the best opportunity to offer the spiked wine that the villager gave him. So he offers the wine to Tsunami, but Tsunami refuses to drink, so Trunks decides to spike the food instead and then offer to feed it to Tsunami. He then goes and proceeds to feed Tsunami as much food as he can until he is drunk. And then once Tsunami is drunk, Tsunami demands more food. However, they were out of the food, and Tsunami throws a fit of anger. Upon this happening, we finally see that the heroes have caught up to Trunks, and Trunks tries to explain that things have only gotten worse now that Tsunami is drunk, and for them to watch out. They are quickly seen by Tsunami, who gets very angry that they're there, and Trunks tries to explain they are his friends and they just want to meet him. And then we get some spousal abuse where Tsunami smacks Trunks over into all the wedding stuff, and then Pan tries to help Trunks. However, Tsunami tries to hit her also, and Goku ends up saving her before she gets hit. And then Goku says, stop picking on the women, how about you fight me instead? Tsunami runs over to hit Goku. However, before he hits him, he passes out on the floor drunk. This was the opportunity they were waiting for. He's finally passed out. Now it's time to cut off those damn whiskers. So we have Doma taking his sweet ass time with the scissors as he goes and cuts off Tsunami's first whisker. As he's preparing to go and cut off Tsunami's second whisker, Tsunami, of course, suddenly wakes up from his drunken slumber. He then sees that Trunkette, who he was calling Trunks, is not actually a girl but a boy, and realizes he has now been betrayed, and he's very pissed off and angry. He threatens to start an earthquake as he realizes he only has one whisker left, but he says, that's fine, I only need one to do an earthquake. Everybody's kind of fearful of what's going to happen next, and of course, here is an earthquake. We have Doma hiding underneath the table as Goku and the rest are just flopping on the floors, trying to hold on to anything they can as the earthquake is happening. And then we see something weird going on here. The earthquake has stopped, but Tsunama is still dancing around, prancing like he is doing the earthquake. They quickly realize that he can't actually start earthquakes, he can only sense them because of his whiskers. He still tries to continue to play it off like he can do an earthquake, but Trunks calls him out on it by smacking him in the face. And then he says because of that, he's going to make it even worse earthquake. And then we see Pan call him out again, saying, then do it. And then he realizes the jig is up and he begins bursting out in tears as he begs for forgiveness and says he's sorry, he never meant to hurt anybody. Then suddenly we see his whiskers start to twitch and he says there's going to be an earthquake. And Pan calls him out on it, saying, you're full of shit, you're bullshitting us, it's not true. And he says, no, it's true, I'm not lying. My whisker only does that when something's going to happen, and this is going to be the mother lode of earthquakes. We then see magma start to rise, lava everywhere, and steam. It just starts bursting out of the ground, and they're like, fuck, he's not lying. We got to get the hell out of here. So they start running out of the lair, and they dive into the water. As they start to swim, Goku notices the lava is starting to come into the water, and he decides he's going to do a last-ditch effort at a Kamehameha wave in the water. The force of the energy blast pushes them all out of the water onto the surface. Upon arriving on the surface, they realize their troubles are not over as they see the volcano is erupting. It is already starting to destroy some of the land. Goku decides there's only one thing he can do to stop this volcano, and that is the Kamehameha wave. Of course it is. So he shoots the Kamehameha wave at the volcano, totally destroying the entire thing, leaving nothing to remain, and ultimately saving the day, saving the village, saving the planet from the mighty volcano. We then see the spaceship surrounded by villagers in celebration that their land has been saved. We see Pan has received her Dragon Ball for her help at liberating the town from the vicious Tsunama, as well as Goku and them saving them from the volcano. We then see that Tsunama is now welcomed part of the village, and everything seems fine and dandy. Everybody's great. And then all of a sudden, we see the Dragon Ball lift up out of Pan's hands, and then it goes into one of the villagers' hands, and we're like, what the hell's going on here? Something's up, something's fishy. We see this villager have a nasty smile on their face as they transform into some alien-like being, obviously an asshole. But anyways, this guy flies up into the air. We see his spaceship come and pick him up as it blinds our heroes and all the villagers. And he says, got you suckers. The Dragon Ball's mine now. Thanks. Peace. And he takes off. And that is the end of the episode. My final thoughts on episode 8. It was a nice conclusion to a little story arc from episode 7. There was some laughs in there. There was a few things that made me chuckle, which doesn't happen too often, but it was pretty funny. But I don't know how I feel about it. Like the enemies become friends kind of thing. Like this guy's been terrorizing your village for all these years, taking all your good stuff, pretending to be a god, and then was planning on stealing your wife or sister or daughter or whatever. And then you're just gonna forgive him. I don't know if I could do that, but it is what it is. You know, Goku forgives everybody, and it's just how it is in this series apparently. But yeah, I think the ending was a nice touch. I wasn't expecting the Dragon Ball to be stolen like that, and then we got this new character to look forward to, which was a little goofy looking, but maybe it'll be something cool. Who knows? Sound like kind of an asshole to me, but we'll see where it goes from here. So far, so good. Episode 9, Lord Lude. So this episode takes place right after the events of the last episode. Our heroes are taking off in their spaceship in hot pursuit of the aliens that have stolen their Dragon Ball. We do finally get to find out who these aliens are. They are indeed called Dawn Para, and Sun Para, and together, yes, they make the Para brothers. We see them here discussing how great they are for capturing the Dragon Ball, and how they're going to be rewarded for it and all this other stuff. We don't know who's exactly rewarding them yet, but that's what we're getting. They do realize finally that they are still being pursued by Trunks, Goku, and Pan, So they decide to try to lose them by taking off as fast as they can, and we get this little game of cat and mouse, and they enter a meteor field where they think they can lose Trunks, Pan, and Goku. However, Trunks successfully maneuvers around the meteorites without dying, and and they are okay, and they make it. And then we go back to the Para Brothers, not suspecting that Trunks is going to be able to keep up with them, decides they're going to have to figure out a better way to get rid of them. So they ask I don't know if it's their ship or a computer in their ship, how to get rid of them. The computer says we should set up an ambush, go to the planet Behi, and I guess there's these worms. I think they're called the Momoa worms or something like that. I don't know exactly. But they go to the planet Behi to lure Trunks and the rest in there. And of course, Trunks falls for the trick and follows them right into this planet. And the planet is basically like a big tunneling system. It almost looks like a meteorite with a bunch of holes in it. Anyways, Trunks goes in there. And then as soon as the Para Brothers notice Trunks and them have entered the planet, they decide to slip on out. And we see them leave planet Behi. And they head to another planet called Planet Lude, which upon seeing it firsthand, it looks like a bunch of worshipping cult members or something going in here. We see this big statue, and then we see this guy standing up on stage. And apparently another person was out getting a Dragon Ball. We don't know the guy's name. He's just some random nobody. But he apparently failed in his mission to get the Dragon Ball. And we see this new villain that they call Moochie Moochie use his whip to wrap around the guy's head. We see the eyes on the statue turn red. And then we see the guy being turned into what looks like to be a doll. And yeah, so I guess this Moochie Moochie has the ability to turn people into a doll. He then picks up this new action figure of his and decides to toss it into, I guess it's like some type of a barrel or container that this statue's holding, which the statue he's calling Lord Lude. Not sure what we're doing with that yet. But anyways, he throws the figure, the human action figure, not human, but whatever the alien he just turned into a figure. Threw him in there, and he says his energy is now part of Lord Lude, which looks like his essence or something. It looks like an hourglass, and we see this energy just kind of move up a little bit in there. The Para Brothers are next on the lineup here. Moochie Moochie asks them what they have for him, and they offer the Dragon Ball that they stole from our heroes. He then says, great job, but then he tells them that they're not going to be rewarded because they failed, because Trunks and them actually had another Dragon Ball that they should have gotten, and since they didn't, then they're going to have to meet the consequences. Of course, the Para Brothers plead for mercy and say, we will get the other Dragon Ball for you. Please just, not turn us into action figures or dolls or whatever. And Moochie Moochie agrees to let them go and try again, so they instantly take off in their ship back to Behi to try to steal the other Dragon Ball from Trunks, Pan, and Goku. We then arrive back in Behi, and we see Trunks maneuvering through what he calls a maze. Trunks says he sees no signs of the Para Brothers and is not sure where to go as he's maneuvering in this maze of a tunnel. Then we see that they are indeed being stalked by some type of underground creature that we haven't seen quite yet. And then Pan's the only one that wises up and says, hey, why don't we use the Dragon Radar to detect the Dragon Ball, which would give away where the Para Brothers are. And as they try to use the Dragon Radar, it is not working. The robot's saying there is no Dragon Ball nearby. And Trunks assumes that this must be because they're in basically underground. Gyrio starts going off as he's detecting a large monster approaching them. We then see the monster, a worm-like creature that starts attacking the ship. We see Trunks trying to maneuver away from the monster to avoid being destroyed. The monster nearly eats them, but they are able to get away. We then see that the Para Brothers have arrived back at Beehive and are watching as Trunks, Goku, and Pan's ship is being attacked, waiting for their opportunity. They continue to try to dodge the worms' advances as they see other worms popping up, and they decide they better get out of the ship and just fight the worms head on themselves. That way their ship's not destroyed. So they leave the ship and they begin to prepare to fight the worm. We then see the Para brothers who've been watching on the sidelines see this as a good distraction as the heroes are fighting the worm. They will infiltrate their spaceship and find the other Dragon Ball. Our heroes decide their option is to shoot some energy blasts. So Pan, Goku, and Trunks shoot an energy blast at the worm, and we see it has no effect on the worm whatsoever. And then we see more worms coming as the ground is moving around our heroes. And then we see a worm come from underneath them, which throws them up in the air and onto the ground. We then see that they are now surrounded by worms on all sides. They stand up and ready to fight, but unsure of how they're supposed to defeat these worms. We then see that the Para brothers have successfully infiltrated the spaceship on their search for the Dragon Ball. This is the end of episode 9. For my final thoughts, I feel like this episode had a lot going for it. We had a lot of action scenes. We had the hot pursuit space race at the beginning between our heroes and, of course, the Para brothers. We did get the Para brothers' names, Dawn, Bon, and Sun, and kind of found out more of the dynamic with them. And then it leads to an even bigger foe, which is Lord Lude, who apparently has a cult following. We don't even know if Lord Lude is a real person, a monster, or what he is. We just know he's a statue that they're pretty much worshiping. And then we are introduced to a big villain, it looks like, as called what? Moochie Moochie. Moochie Moochie can use a whip to turn people into dolls. That's pretty badass. I kind of feel like I like that character just because he seems like he's, pretty damn evil. So I can't wait to figure out who exactly Lord Lude is and more about this Moochie Moochie character, even though I'm not sure about that name. It's not very scary. Somebody named Moochie Moochie doesn't scare me, but we'll just pretend like it does for the effort here. But anyways, overall, I thought it was a decent episode. We got another cliffhanger. How are they going to defeat these worms? And I guess we'll find out shortly. Episode 10, Dance and Attack. So we pick up where we left off on episode 9. Our heroes are with all these damn dirty worms, trying to figure out how to beat them. They're throwing kicks, they're throwing punches, they're throwing energy beams. Nothing seems to be phasing these worms. What the hell are they going to have to do to kill these damn things, right? We then go into the hero spaceship and we see the Para brothers are rampaging through looking for that Dragon Ball. They can't find it and they're assuming that one of the heroes has it on them, and they're like, oh no, hopefully they don't get their ass kicked and get ate by these worms, because if they do get their ass kicked and get ate by these worms and the Dragon Ball is ate, how the hell are we going to get it? We're screwed and we're going to get turned into dolls. So then we are looking at the worms just running a rampage, beating up Goku, Pan, and Trunks. We then take a little detour here to the planet Lude again. We see they have gathered up some prisoners. Who the hell knows where from? We just see some shackled up prisoners here. One of them looks like a dog. I don't know what's going on with this. But then we see the Lude statue that they pray to, some kind of electric bolts to these guys, turning them into dolls. And of course, you know what comes next. We have Moochie Moochie come over and gather them and toss them some bitches into the statue barrel thing, whatever we're calling that, the ceremonial thing for the statue. And we see the hourglass once more starting to fill up. So then we see the eyes of this Lord Lude statue light up. We then go back to Goku trying to figure out how to beat the worms again. He's riding on the back of one. He actually slides down the worm's back, gets to its tail, and realizes the weakness is indeed the tail. Like a snake, you throw them off balance by grabbing their tail. He starts swinging the worms around, bashing them into the tunnel, throwing them around. He then tells Trunks and Pan, hey, this is how we beat the shit out of these things. Start grabbing some tails. So they start grabbing their tails. They start tying them into knots and tying them together and everything else. And they're just beating the hell out of these worms. Now they have successfully figured out the strategy to beat these sumbitches. So yeah, they're kicking their ass. That's what we see there. They successfully defeated the worms. We see dead worms everywhere. Our hero's a little bit worn out, but then they hear some clapping and cheering. We go to the Para brothers, who are like, hey, good job defeating those worms. And then we see Pan point out that these guys are indeed the ones that stole the Dragon Balls from them. The Para brothers then demand that they give them the other Dragon Ball that they have. And then Pan says, hey, we're not the ones giving you our Dragon Ball. We want our other one that you stole back. And all of a sudden we see a standoff, and then something really weird begins to happen. Okay, this part's pretty ridiculous and weird. So we have Bon Para right there. Then we have Dawn Para. And then we have Sun Para. I think I got that correct. And they're all kind of like beatboxing right here. like making different noise. That's what I think they're doing anyways. We got, see, I agree with Trunks. This shit's weird. Like, what the hell's wrong with them? But we hear them beatboxing away, and it's just like, what kind of weird shit is this? And then we see them take off their like chest armor is what I'm thinking, and then you see that Bonpar is like a boombox, and then Dawn and Sunpars are like, I don't know, they like light up. I guess they're supposed to be like the spotlights or something. And I think those are what like you'll see here later on that I think they have a controlling ability. Like that's because it's weird, but I'll explain as we go. But yeah, they're just like dancing and acting all kinds of weird shit here. And you see the spotlights coming from the armor, and then the boombox going in the background, doing this hip hop dance and the lyrics. Yeah, very fucking weird. Excuse my language. Very fucking weird. But yeah, I had to play this. It was a weird part. So let's go on with the review. Again, what I was saying is I think the armor that's like the spotlight is like what controls the characters, because then we see our heroes, they start not be able to control their bodies and they start dancing. And then, of course, we have Bonpar taking initiative, and he's just beating the hell out of everybody. I don't think the other two are even attacking. It's just Bonpar punching and kicking our heroes. They can't fight back. All they can do is dance because they can't control their bodies whatsoever. So we see a good bit of this where he's just going around. They're singing along the song. It's like almost like a Disney sing-along song where they're like, singing the song and they're dancing around doing things, whatever. But then we get to this part right here. This is where Bonpar is like, let's finish them off. So they start speeding up the music, and it makes them move quicker. And we see Gario pretty much explode because he's moving so fast. And he's just kind of laying there on the ground. And they're like, oh no, Gario, you short-circuited from all the movement. And then we see the worms have risen once more. And they're coming over to basically, it looks like, to attack the Para boys, because I don't know if they like the music or don't like the music, but the Para boys are terrified. They're like, hell no, we're not messing with these worms. What the hell's going on? And then we see that they are basically going to be surrounded by these worms. And this distracts them from playing the music. And we see that the armor, which is the spotlight, whatever it is, the armor, the boombox, everything shuts off. And then we see our heroes regain control of their bodies. And they're like, all right, now it's our turn to kick these Para boys' asses. And it's like they fly down there, one hit these guys, and they're done. So they're just weak-ass people that apparently have a special ability with the whole singing, dance, and hip-hop shit. But they're out. They knock these guys out one hit. And then they decide, hey, let's go search their spacecraft now for the damn Dragon Balls. So then we see Goku on the outside watching the Para boys, which are tied up while he's eating their food, apparently. And then we see inside, we see Pan and Trunks going through all their shit. They're not finding the Dragon Ball. And Trunks is like, hey, Pan, we're just going to wait until these guys wake up and then get it out of them then. And Pan's like, all right. And then we see that the command center thing's going off. And she asks Gero if he can read the language. It says, Destination Planet Lude. And then we hear that autopilot has been initiated. And they're like, what the hell's going on? And then we see the door close and unlock. And then we see that they are starting to lift off. And Goku and Trunks is like, what the hell's going on? We see the ship rise up off the ground. And yes, take off. And poor Pan and Gero are now going to Planet Lude, where the cult is. Who the hell knows what's going to happen to these guys? It's terrible. It's terrible. Poor Pan. So that is what we have to look forward to with the next episode. And that was indeed the end. My final thoughts on episode 10. I'm going to have to say this has probably been my least favorite episode of the first 10 episodes. And I hate to say it, but let's kind of break this down a little bit and see why. We start the episode out where they're going to fight a bunch of oversized grub worms, right? And we got these incredibly powerful Saiyans, you know what I mean? And they can't kill these grub worms, like they're shooting energy blasts at. You're telling me you can shoot a Kamehameha blast at a volcano and destroy it from the previous episodes, but you can't do the same thing to a grub worm and kill it. You know what I mean? And the only way to defeat these things is to grab them by the tail and swing them up against the walls and shit. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, I get it. You can't make everything super powerful. You can't make everything super weak because it's like there's not much of a story there. But it's really hard to believe that they couldn't defeat these grub worms pretty easily. So that's one thing. The other thing is these Para boys. It was a bit ridiculous, the whole hip hop like power superpower they got going on there where they can control people. And I'll be honest, I mean, I think that part's more for like kids. Maybe if I was a kid, I'd be like, oh, this is funny, this is cool. But I did notice that the first time I watched it, I was like, this is ridiculous. And then when I was making this video to show you guys, I listened to it again. I'm like, oh, it kind of has a tune to it. So maybe the more you watch it, the more you hear it, you're like, oh, this is all right. You know what I mean? But I definitely got like Ginyu Force vibe, which this is worse than the Ginyu Force. You know, the Ginyu Force pose and all that. This was a little bit more like, I don't know. I mean, I like that they tried to do something with hip hop, but I don't know. I just wasn't a fan of it. It was a little weird. And then the other thing I don't get is like the main storyline here is Lord Lude is what we're leading to. And we still haven't gotten any backstory. Like, we're getting the same information that we did the first time we seen Planet Lude, where he turned somebody to a doll and then threw him into the pot or whatever, and then we got a little bit of the energy go up. So I'm assuming the point of this is to show us the same thing again. This time they turned a whole group of people into dolls, and then basically I guess they're sacrificing them, giving the energy to Lord Lude. And I'm assuming once the hourglass fills up, then he's going to come back to life or resurrected or whatever the hell they're doing. That's the only thing kind of makes sense where they're leading to there, but they're not really giving us any more information. So I'm thinking that we're either going to get a lot more episodes. It's not going to be done the next episode. Maybe there's going to be like 2 or 3 more episodes dealing with Lord Lude, because it seems like we're not even cracking the ground with them yet. So that's kind of my pick at that as well. It's like there's not a whole lot of information like getting us suspenseful, like what's going on. It's just kind of like the same thing over again. Episode 11, Lord Lude's Curse. So this episode picks up where the last one left off. We have the Para Brothers ship and hyper mode autopiloting to Lord Lude's planet. We see that it's going so fast that Pan and Geru are just tossed to the floor and just kind of like stuck there. They're bouncing around. It's pretty maddening of the speed. We then see Pan just blaming Geru for everything because she's angry at the situation. And she's threatening to tear him apart as he's just saying, danger, danger, danger. She's yelling at him, saying that she is all he has, and if he doesn't obey her, she's going to destroy him. And she starts beating him with a stick as she's backing him up into a corner. She then tries to stomp on the poor guy. This is definitely robot abuse going on here. He's so terrified. And then she threatens to do even more harm to him if he doesn't figure out how to drive the ship, because she can't read the alien language. He says, push this button right here to be able to fly the ship. She hits the button. It actually drops her into the cargo hall. Trunks interrogates the Para brothers, trying to figure out where their ship took Pan. They start to sing to try to manipulate the situation. However, Son Para gives away that the ship was autopiloted to Lord Lude's planet. We are back on the Para ship. We see it has finally arrived at Lord Lude's planet. Pan hits the cargo door by accident, opening it, causing her to fall out and all the cargo to fall on top of her. Of course, she blames poor little Geru for the incident, but then she realizes that Geru's dragon radar is going off, indicating that there is a Dragon Ball nearby. She begins searching for it and following the dragon radar. She eventually comes up on a temple, which is Lord Lude's temple, and all of a sudden she hears danger, danger from Geru as he warns her that it's not safe. She says that you're going to come with me. He refuses, so she goes alone. Pan enters the hallway to the temple. She hears a bunch of chanting, so she decides to go check out and see what it is. We then see that there's a large gathering of Lord Lude's cult members. They're the ones that are just chanting up a storm. We see that Pan is listening in. However, she notices the Dragon Ball on the stage next to Muchi Muchi, but unfortunately she's caught. We see Trunks and Goku have arrived on planet Lude. As they get out to search for Pan and Geru, they see Geru flying by. Geru runs over to Trunks and begins to tell him danger, danger, that Pan's in danger, and then he points in the direction where they need to go. We go back to the temple and we see that Pan is holding her own as she takes out the guards. She then confronts Muchi Muchi about the Dragon Ball, stating that it was stolen from them and that she's taking it back. He laughs at her and says, you don't know who I am. And then he talks up how great Lord Lude is and how he is the deity of destruction. And then he just goes on about how they're going to resurrect him and how great he is. And while he's talking all this shit, Pan's like, I'm taking this Dragon Ball. So she takes it and starts taking off. He notices it, and then we see the statue zap poor Pan, turning her into a doll. Muchi Muchi picks up Pan and is about to throw her in Lord Lude's pot, But right before he is able to do that, we hear a crashing noise as Trunks and Goku, along with the tied up Para Para boys, come through the ceiling to save the day. And upon of them crashing through, we see that Muchi Muchi drops poor Pan, the doll, down the steps. Muchi Muchi then sees the Para Para boys tied up and realizes they failed him once again. So he zaps them, turning them all into dolls, and then he uses his whip to whip them into Lord Lude's pot. And then we see their energy is absorbed. Goku then asks Muchi Muchi how he could take out his own people. Does he have no heart? And Muchi Muchi replies he did them a favor, now they're part of Lord Lude. And then he sweeps out Trunks' legs with his whip and then begins to try to hit Goku with his whip as well, as Goku is dodging it. We then see Goku try to fly over and hit Muchi Muchi. However, Muchi Muchi shoots him in the face. Goku then says, you're going to have to do a lot more than that to get rid of us. And then Lord Lude summons a beast that he calls Leon. Looks kind of like I guess you'd call it like a lion, a Leon the lion. And Goku just stands up and shoots the ceiling, causing a rock to fall on top of Leon, destroying him instantly. We then see a shocked look on Muchi Muchi's face because he's like, how the hell did they just so easily destroy my pet? We then see Giru, who's trying to help Pan, who he realizes has been turned into a doll. However, while doing so, he's suddenly kicked by an unknown person and hits the wall, taking Giru out. We then see this unknown person pick up Pan. Leon, the lion robot, then explodes, killing Muchi Muchi, who was standing nearby, totally dissolving his entire body. We see Muchi Muchi's followers look on in horror at this sight. Goku is checking on Trunks after the explosion to make sure he's okay. They are then interrupted by Muchi Muchi's whip that apparently has its own personality. It then transforms, and then he calls himself Muchi. We then see up in the distance, watching on, someone holding poor little Pan. My final thoughts for episode 11. I thought the episode was pretty good in all. I was a little bit confused with the ending that happened there. But I thought the beginning, I mean, there was a lot of action throughout the episode, but there was that comedy element between Giru and Pan, which made me laugh a couple times at the beginning when they were interacting. And then the part that confused me is we had like that Leo the Lion introduced, and he was defeated in like 2 seconds. We find out he's just a robot. So they didn't even have to fight him. And then I thought Muchi Muchi was going to be like a hardcore like super villain, like he was going to be strong. And their fight with him didn't last very long either. He whipped him a couple times, and then the Leon the Lion explodes and kills him. And then I'm confused there too because his whip's left, but his whip has its own personality and it transforms, and then he calls himself Muchi as well. Not Muchi Muchi, but just Muchi. The only element that's a little surprising, we had Pan get turned into a doll, and then we have a surprise character that picked her up that's like sitting in the background. We don't know who that is. So that'll be interesting to find out in the next episode. But overall, it wasn't a bad episode. I'm intrigued to find out what's going to happen. We still don't know what's going to happen with Lord Lude. So yeah, let's go. Episode 12, The Last Oracle of Lude. So this episode picks up where the last one left off. We have Trunks and Goku confronting this new Muchi character. He has whips for arms. He starts whipping the ground with his whip arms, and we see the tiles come to life, basically. It seems like he can control anything he touches with his arms. So we see these tiles coming to life, and he's sending them after Goku and Trunks. Goku and Trunks are running from him, trying to escape. Trunks tries to use an energy blast to destroy them. However, it seems to make things worse because then there's more tiles, and they just keep chasing him down. Trunks eventually thinks he escapes them, but however, we see a whole like ceiling full of these tiles fall down on him, making a pyramid. Trunks can barely hold them up, but is trying to hold them up with all his might, or he'll be crushed. We then see Goku trying to confront Muchi. However, Muchi is doing all sorts of tricks to Goku. First, he uses his whip on the stairs, causing Goku to fall. And then he uses his whip on some swords that are hanging on the wall and throws them at Goku. And then he uses his whip on a statue that apparently can breathe fire. I'm assuming it was holding fire beforehand. Well, it's shooting fire at Goku, catching Goku on fire. Goku's running all around away from it. Goku eventually grabs one of the swords that were thrown at him and slices the statue in half. He then confronts Muchi and tells him to fight him one-on-one and stop being a coward. Muchi instead uses his whip to hit the ground below Goku and has hands come up that grab Goku and pull him to the ground. Now, Goku is defenseless, so Muchi starts whipping him with his whip hands, and then Goku said he's had enough, so he transforms into his Super Saiyan to break out of the situation. We see someone watching the battle on a monitor. They mention that they know that Muchi will be defeated soon, now seeing the power of Goku. And they mention that they're going to have to summon Lord Lude in order to defeat him. However, they don't have enough energy yet, so he's trying to figure out how he's going to do that. We then see a guard approach him. He states to the guard to gather all the followers and that he will be out there soon to talk to them. We then see the cult followers as they're excited. They haven't seen Master Del Talkie, which is the guy we just seen, for decades, and they can't wait for him to help them. Del Talkie makes his grand entrance and has Pan in his pocket. We see him approach the crowd as he tells them it's been too long since he's seen him and how great it is to be there finally, and then tells them that it's time to resurrect Lord Lude. The crowd is going wild. They're like, yeah, let's do this. The cult's all into it. And then he tells them, but in order to bring Lude around, we're going to have to make sacrifices, and all of you are going to die, basically. To do so, it's for the greater good, like all great cult leaders do. And the crowd's kind of like, we don't want to die. We don't want to do that. And he's like, you're going to have to. He then pulls out his staff that he uses to turn on the statue. He uses on the statue, the eyes light up. The crowd realizes that the statue's is controlled by the remote of the staff. And they say, that's not the God we believed in. We thought he was something different. And he's like, oh, did you? It's too bad. You're going to die anyways. And pretty much just laughs it off. And then we see the statue begin to zap everybody, turning them into dolls. And then we see a wind that comes and just picks up, and we see them all being sucked up into the container for the statue. We then see the hourglass container has increased with the energy from the cult. We then see Del Talkie being weird with Pan as he rubs her on his face. She says, get this freak away from me. Somebody help me. What the hell is going on here? We then see Trunks wise up and finally go Super Saiyan to get the pyramid of tiles off of him finally and toss them away. We then see Goku and Muchi outside of the temple about to go at it. Goku is able to dodge his whip for a while until he's finally grabbed. However, he's able to slingshot Muchi into the hillside, but Muchi is able to get his whip hands around Goku's neck, turning him back into his normal self as he hangs over the cliff, defenseless. And then out of nowhere, we see an energy beam from none other than Trunks, who takes out Muchi to save the day. This scene is probably the most disturbing scene I've seen in the series yet. Apparently this Del Talkie guy is a kitty diddler. I mean, we're supposed to know that Pan is a doll right now, and he knows that Pan's a real girl, but is a doll. But at the same time, it's really weird that he's touching her and rubbing on her and rubbing his face on her. And he's supposed to be playing house, playing with dolls and stuff, whatever. But there's a really weird part here where he takes her and lays her down and starts trying to change her clothes. And you can hear her internal monologue where she's like, no, don't do it. No, please, no. Grandpa, help me. Grandpa, help me. Very disturbing. I mean, it's not it's not okay, because this is supposed to be a 13-year-old girl. She's crying out for her grandpa while some dude's ripping off her shirt. Yes, they're playing her off as a doll. If she wasn't a doll and she was just supposed to be a little girl, this would have probably not been allowed, I don't know, for a kid's cartoon. But I found it very disturbing, so I'm going to let you guys listen to this part.
Wait, maybe yellow would look better on you. Honestly, any color would look good on you, my little snooky wookums. With the right pants, we could put you in orange or even green. The possibilities are endless. But today, yes, baby blue. Okay, let's try it on.
Hey, what are you doing? Don't do that! Stop it! Please! Grandpa! Grandpa, where are you? Help me!
Goodness, the alarm interrupted the kitty diddler. We then see him go over towards the alarm, and it's basically telling him that now Lord Lude's energy is high enough to resurrect him. Goku and Trunks return to the center of the temple to find everybody gone. Goku mentions that he can no longer detect Pan's energy and is worried about her. And then he discovers the Dragon Ball. He's then interrupted by the kitty diddler, who states that he needs to put down the Dragon Ball or else. And then he reveals that he indeed has turned Pan into a doll. As they looked shocked at Pan being a doll, he then initiates with his staff to resurrect the one and only Lord Lude. And that is the end of the episode. My final thoughts on episode 12. To be honest, I feel like I've been disappointed by the villains so far. Even like the whole story, it just seems like I thought Muchi Muchi was going to be a little bit more villainous and more, tough. And it just seems like the villains aren't threatening. They're not that interesting. Muchi Muchi gets destroyed or whatever by the machine. And then we see Muchi get destroyed by one single energy blast from Trunks, who's been getting his ass kicked in every episode. Like, Trunks seems like he's one of the weakest people now, which is weird too, because I thought Trunks would be more powerful. It just seems like he's kind of a bitch. And then we got the kitty diddler, which is a weird character, and I feel like that scene with Pan being the doll and all that stuff wouldn't be as bad if he was like having a tea party or doing that kind of like doll shit. But like the fact that you hear her inner monologue, like her talking, like she can't move her body or do anything about it, but you hear her like, "Oh, please, Grandpa, help me! No!" Like it sounds like an SA victim. You know what I mean? And it's just like, that's terrible. Like a kid watching that, I don't know. I mean, you're supposed to be like, "Oh, she's a doll, so it don't matter." But I don't know, guys. Maybe I'm critical when I shouldn't be. But that's how I felt about the episode. That's episode 12 for you. Let's move on. Episode 13, The Man Behind the Curtain. So this picks up where we left off on episode 12. The energy vial is almost full. We see the great and powerful Lude being resurrected. The statue is cracking. And what are we going to see? We're going to see this big demonic beast creature that we should all be scared of. No, we don't. We see this grumpy cat looking like Snorlax freaking thing. Sorry. But anyways, Goku says he looks cute. And Trunks is kind of like, I'm not sure. He seems like he's giving off some weird vibes, dude. But anyways, we see them trying to get a hold of the diddler who has kidnapped our poor Pan. And then he tries to run away. We see Trunks and Goku try to help Pan. However, every time they try to get around Lord Lude, he blocks their path. So they have no alternative other than to fight him. Goku decides the best way to get around Lude is to distract him. He does this by smacking his ass for some reason. And I'm assuming this is so Trunks can be the one to get around to go save Pan. It doesn't seem to be working, however. We then see Del Talkie, this Chris Hansen poster boy, as he has a tea party with Pan, and then he decides to lay her on a doll bed. He then decides, hey, why not do something else weird and disturbing? Let me brush her hair. So he begins to do that. We do hear the internal monologue, of course, of Pan as she's disgusted by all this, but then she states that she will never play with dolls again, and who the hell would blame her? We go back to Goku fighting Lude. He tries to use an energy blast to Lude's face, but it has no effect. Lude then tries to hit him, and Goku barely moves out of the way, but ends up falling onto the ground next to Trunks, who's always on the ground for some reason. They then stand up just to be smashed by Lude's foot. We then go back to Del Talkie, who's about to get into some diddling, but he's interrupted by someone calling him. He then goes to a secret area and unlocks the door. We see him go inside this area and he kneels down. And then we're introduced to Dr. Mew, who looks like a galactic Dr. Gero. Dr. Mew asks Del Talkie if Lude is at 100% power. He says he's only on level 2. He had to activate him early because he needed him to fight Goku and Trunks. He says once they defeated them, he will be able to be full power. And then Dr. Mew begins to watch the battle. We go back to Lude's foot and we see that Goku and Trunks are powering up as Super Saiyans in order to lift Lude up off of them. As they throw Lude down, he comes crashing down onto the ground, taking out the column. Now, seeing that Lude is not invincible, I guess Trunks and Goku decided, hey, let's just double team his ass. So they start beating him up. But I don't know why they didn't just do this from the beginning. Why didn't they just double team his ass from the beginning? But who the hell knows? It's Goku and Trunks. So they continue to beat down Lude until he's flat on his stomach. He then turns his head around and shoots out a lightning, but Trunks and Goku are able to dodge it. That gives him enough time to get up, and then Lude begins to twist his arms around like a windmill, causing a great burst of air. Dr. Mew is watching the battle, and he's not happy with Lude's progress. He blames Deltaki for activating Lude too early and tells him he better not lose. Goku does a Kamehameha wave on one side of Lude, while Trunks does an energy blast on the other. This causes Lude to start to break down a little bit, and he's unable to spin his arms around, stopping the windmill effect. Dr. Mew tells Deltaki that he feels a great power coming from the doll, that he could use the doll to give to Lude, which would make him full power. And Deltaki feels disgusted by the idea. He says he loves her and that he will not do that to her, and he refuses. And Dr. Mew says, you dare betray me? He's like, this is your last chance. And he still refuses to give him Pan. And Dr. Mew decides, well then, I guess you're done too. And he turns his ass into a doll. We then see Pan and Deltaki being pulled towards Lude. And as they get surrounded by a green-like electricity, as Lude is fighting Goku and Trunks, he then has a red-like electricity that's attracting him towards the dolls. We then see Deltaki and Pan's souls come up out of the dolls and come towards Lude as he opens his mouth and eats them. We see that Lude now has enough energy to go full power, and Goku and Trunks look on in horror as he begins his transformation. We see Dr. Mew is very excited and ecstatic about this event, as Trunks and Goku are not sure what to expect, and Goku screams out for Pan. That is the end of episode 13. My final thoughts. Man, I am kind of disappointed with Lord Lude. I was expecting much more than what we got there. I was expecting, like, something, man. I need a good villain here, and it just isn't Lord Lude. Disappointing. And then I see this Dr. Mew, who looks like he's just a clone of Dr. Gero. I'm not sure what's going on with him. It might be Dr. Gero or like his brother or something. Maybe we'll find out in another episode. But, man, I'm just not satisfied with the villains on the show so far. I mean, there's been some really nice episodes. I'm kind of waiting for this whole storyline, this Lord Lude thing to be over. I don't know. I mean, there's funny moments in the show. There's good stuff. There's some action there. But it's just not been... The action has kind of been lackluster, too. Like, it seems like it's over real quick. I guess I'm just used to those epic Dragon Ball Z battles. But yeah, that's about it. Episode 14, The Battle Within. So we pick up where we left off with Lord Lude now at full power. We see him show off his true extent of his power as he shoots out a red-like energy beam through his eyes towards Goku and Trunks. It goes between them and through the temple wall. We then see a huge explosion on the outside. An overly triumphant Dr. Mew celebrates as he sees the power of his creation. We see Pan floating in the abyss with all the other victims of Lord Lude who appear to be asleep. We then see the most disgusting, vile thing we could possibly see, and that is indeed Deltaki as he approaches Pan trying to kiss her. They then see the best part of the entire episode is when Pan slaps the shit out of him. Then she goes on to beat the living hell out of him. And this is by far the most interesting and great thing that happens. As Pan's beating the hell out of Deltaki, we start seeing some of the other victims and followers of Dr. Lude begin to awaken, including the Para brothers. As Pan's making Deltaki her bitch, he reveals that he knows how to get them out of there, However, he doesn't want to say because it will destroy Lude, which will cause Dr. Mew to basically destroy him, kill him. And then we see that the other followers of Dr. Lude realize that Dr. Teltaki is the one that screwed them over, and they all decide to go after him. And then we see Pan rile everybody up and into following her as she states that she will get them free. We see more of Lord Lude as he's just shooting everything with his laser beam eyes, destroying parts of the temple and to the outside. Just total carnage and destruction. Pan enlists the help of the Par brothers to get the information out of Deltaki. They then begin to do their song and dance to manipulate Deltaki into giving the information, which is successful as he reveals that in order to get loose, they must destroy Lude from inside and outside by shooting his heart. Deltaki points up, revealing a shining red object in the distance. He then reveals that this is indeed a single cell of Dr. Mew, who created Lord Lude in a lab using his own DNA. And the only way to kill Lord Lude is to destroy that single cell. Pan sees that Goku has been captured and is being squeezed to death by Lord Lude. She decides to shoot an energy blast on the inside at the cell, which causes a momentary malfunction with Lord Lude, which allows Goku to escape. Deltaki then reveals to Pan that simultaneously she must be attacking Lude's cell from the inside, as one of them must be attacking it from the outside in order to defeat Lude. Pan, now knowing how to defeat Lord Lude, tries to get the attention of Trunks and Goku, but is unable to. She then grabs a hold of Deltaki and tells him that he better figure out how. And then she's informed by the Para brothers that they could use their telepathic abilities to talk to Goku and Trunks. We then see a rampaging Lord Lude who is just shooting eyeball blasts all over the place. Goku is trying to get away and barely escapes as a column almost falls on top of him. We then see that Goku hears the Para brothers trying to connect to him telepathically, and they tell him that he needs to shoot the red light on Lord Lude's chest. However, Goku states that Lord Lude is all red and he doesn't see a light. Pan then uses another energy blast on the cell, which then shows the flickering red light on Lord Lude. Goku sees this and now knows where to attack. We then see Lord Lude shoot a huge energy blast out of his mouth at Trunks. We then see that it is so powerful that it destroys the entire temple. We then see Goku go over to Trunks to make sure he's still alive, which surprisingly Trunks survives the attack. Goku then tries to shoot an energy beam at the targeted area on Lord Lude's chest. However, it has no effect and just seems to piss off Lord Lude. And then Goku is informed by the Para brothers that he has to time this attack with Pan on the inside in order for it to be successful. We then see Goku and Pan try to do an attack simultaneously at the cell. However, unfortunately, they're unable to align at the same time. Goku then tries again. They use a countdown, but Goku says he's not good with numbers, so they're going to try it a different way as they failed multiple times.
Okay,
So apparently Goku can't count,
things sound kind of weird.
so they're going to do this
So, what does he say?
purple pot thing. I've never
He's
even heard
wanting
of
to
such
chant
thing.
words instead of a regular countdown.
He's trying to
Fine.
explain it to Pan, and
Whatever
she's like,
works.
I don't give a shit what we
Just
do.
like
Just
to
get me
get
the
out of here
F out of here
sometime
already. This is
today.
ridiculous.
And I want all of you chanting along with us. Got that?
All right, Goku, we're ready when you are.
It's like Pan's own
As long
cult
as there's
now.
no math involved, I'll be just fine.
Time to rock and roll.
Everybody!
Purple pot!
And then we see the energy beams going and aligning correctly. And indeed, it's the end of the world as we know it. And the cell is dead. So then we just see poor old Lord Lude falling apart at everybody's feet there. Just a terrible event. So long. So long, Lord Lude. You've been such a great person, creature, whatever the hell you are. R.I.P. Lord Lude, our friend, you will be missed, but not really, as everybody is cheering in celebration, and then we see them glowing as their souls are being transmitted back to their bodies. We see the pot explode, and free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty.
Hi, Pan. You're safe. And look, we got the 6-star Dragon Ball back.
Danger! Danger! Hero!
Just the voice I don't want to hear.
I always feel so bad for Giru. He just gets his
Wait, have
ass
you guys
booted.
seen Daltaki?
And then we see the
Sure
worst part
haven't.
about all this is, you guessed it, the kitty diddler escapes once more to diddle around somewhere else, unfortunately.
So long, chumps. We'll be seeing you soon.
Get back here! I'll tear you apart!
That's the end of episode 14. My final thoughts. I'm actually just kind of happy that the Lord Lude arc is over with. I felt like Lord Lude was kind of lame. It was just not that great. And then, the worst part of it all is the kitty diddler Deltachi escapes, or Deltaki, I don't know what the hell his name is. Whatever it is. He escapes, and we're going to have to deal with him again, I'm assuming, in the future. And then we did get another glimpse of Dr. Mew. And I get, like, Dr. Gero vibes from him, so I'm thinking he's going to have a bigger part to play in the series going forward, sort of like Dr. Gero did with Cell and all that fun stuff. So maybe it'll be interesting. We'll see where it goes, but so far it's been all right. This has probably been the lamest storyline that I've seen yet. It could have been something better, I feel, but it is what it is.